What's up, Johnny? Nice to see you today, my friend. All right. Good morning for those of you in time zones where it's morning. Good day otherwise. Happy Saturday if it's Saturday for you. Happy New Year. Happy New Year for everybody, I think. Follow a relatively normal calendar. Trying to remember how to publish a Python package so it can be downloaded with pip. The only way I've ever done it is through GitHub Actions, and it uses a command, like at the end of the chain, if I recall correctly, it uses a command line tool called Twine that actually does the upload into the PyPy system or whatever, PyPI. I don't know if they like it. I don't necessarily think they like to be called PyPy. Well, I don't really know either. So yeah, my understanding is maybe you could use that Twine thing locally, or maybe there is a web interface, although I don't know exactly how to build it or whatever. But that's the only way I've ever done it, is through GitHub Actions, and then I think it uses a command line thing called Twine inside there, which is how, the same way that all the CircuitPython libraries do it, basically. Although it is a few hops if you want to try to find it, because you got to go to the repo that's got the action stuff in it. All right, so yes, good morning, happy new year. Hope everybody is doing well. I am back. For anybody that's new, my name is Tim. I am working on some CircuitPython stuff. I typically stream at this time each week around 10 a.m. Central Time. Working on stuff related to CircuitPython. Today we are working on a game that is made with CircuitPython, not anything related to the libraries or the project itself, but different Saturdays, different mornings I work on different stuff. Just depends on what is going on. If you in fact are new, then you may not really know what CircuitPython is. You can find more at circuitpython.org right here. This is the main website for the project. It is basically a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers, of which there is one connected onto the back of here. I don't necessarily have all the lights and stuff set up to see it very well, but basically there is a Feather ESP32S3, I think, on there. We could get a better picture over here on the downloads page, where we could also see a bunch of other examples of these microcontrollers. Feather S3... Yeah, it's one of these, I think, or maybe this. One of these, I'm not sure. I think this one, but I'm not sure. But these microcontrollers, they come in all different shapes and sizes. They're essentially just tiny computers that you can write programs for. If you choose to use CircuitPython, which is the thing that I typically stream about most frequently, then the way it works usually is the device shows up on your computer like a thumb drive. I have it open in my IDE right here, the CircuitPy drive. On the drive, there will be a code.py Python code file. You can just put whatever Python code you want into here. And by default, when you save it, the microcontroller, the tiny computer that's on this device, will actually go ahead and reset itself and run the latest version of your code. You plug it in with a USB. I don't know if I said that, but that's the most typical ways these devices plug in with a USB cable. As always, thanks to Adafruit. Adafruit is a hardware and software company based out of New York. They're the ones who make CircuitPython possible by paying myself and the rest of the team who work on CircuitPython. So huge thanks to them. If you want to help support CircuitPython, one of the easiest ways is by supporting them. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by purchasing hardware. The microcontroller I'm using, this Feather S3 device that's on the back of here, is an Adafruit hardware design. This display that it's plugged into here, we can even get a nice sort of shot of the name, 3.5 inch 480 by 320 Featherwing V2. This is also an Adafruit design and hardware device, and you can get those as well as like any other little electronic widget that you could imagine that you can connect up with your microcontroller, as well as all sorts of different kinds of microcontrollers and all sorts of different fun stuff. So thank you to everyone who does support them by purchasing hardware so that they can continue supporting all the folks working on CircuitPython, including myself. Today, diving into the project, trying to, let's see here, RMRF Python setup dist, setup py, and then twine upload dist. That looks actually familiar, yeah, to the action I've seen, I think, but I missed something. There's no project description on PyPy. I think project description maybe these days is supposed to come from pyproject.toml. Although I guess if you're using setup py, maybe it's the old way. It should be declared in there somewhere, potentially. We switched all the CircuitPython libraries over to pyproject.toml, although I'm not super up on all the actual differences. I was not super involved in the changeover. I just know the new way. And I happen to know the new way more than I ever did the old way. So it's kind of just the way in my mind, but it is also the new way. So one of the things that I worked on over the holiday break here, was this, the start of a game that I've had the idea for in my head for a while. And it's kind of like 2D tile map graphics. Our guy doesn't have any animations. Our character doesn't have any animations as you run around right now. Oops, I broke the joystick off again. I need to glue this down. I should have done that before I started today, but oh well. Super glue this. There's no animations, but the sprite works. There is an index out of bounds range, a very, very literal index out of bounds range on the edge of the map if you walk out the door, so don't do that right now. Apparently I did not follow that rule though, so we get to reset. In this game though, my intention is to have a little world where you can run around in. There's potentially different buildings or different places where you can go in the world. And kind of the central game loop of this game is collecting resources and processing them and then making them, crafting them into jewelry most specifically, but there may end up being some other crafting and stuff going on as well. And I have here just a little test room that I've been working in so far. So I'll run you through what I do have so far. I have obviously the ability to render this little map. I actually have the ability to preview these maps on the computer as well. I don't. We'll get into that when I need to start messing with the map. I'm not going to do it just now, because it is like separate from the rest of the game and stuff. But I also made a little engine that lets me kind of preview this map as a PNG file on a computer, so I can kind of like edit the map and then see what it's going to be before I run it on the microcontroller, which is kind of cool. The map is just a JSON file currently, which has kind of a comma-separated value grid of tile information, as well as some other stuff packed into the JSON object. So we have this world. We can run around the tiles. There's like kind of rudimentary collision. So all of these workbenches and stuff, I cannot walk over them. There's collision, so our character won't walk through them, which is pretty cool. The rock has collision. This thing, you can walk behind it, which is kind of a nice little visual trick. And then there's collision on the actual furnace thing itself as well as this anvil here. Although it looks a bit weird because the sprite's very small and the collision is bigger. Maybe at some point an embellishment, a sort of nice to have, might be to like come up with a way to shrink the collision there, but that's way down the road. We have a lot of other stuff to work on first. So we have this part, and then the other thing that I have so far is this screen, which interestingly worked the first time. I'm gonna reset the microcontroller real fast. I know I'm in the middle of a description, but I also was Expecting to catch a specific bug. And if it's not going to happen, I'm curious to know that as well. But I want to reset real fast. I just kind of unplugged, replugged, and I'm going to go back to this. Yeah, okay, so this is the bug I was looking for, is none of the text is here now. I don't know what's up with that, but I think that it's not a bug in the game or a bug in the thing which is showing the text, which is technically a scrolling label. I think it's a bug in CircuitPython or display.io or something with this display maybe, because if I just reset and it runs the same code, and I go back there, oh, it doesn't spawn again. Interesting, okay. So I can just keep resetting and it will never spawn? Okay, 1 second. Sorry, we're going to do a little bit of debugging and then I'll get back to the explanation. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do one more just to be like even more super duper sure, but it seems like they will just not spawn. So maybe it is actually a bug in the game. But the thing that makes me think that's not the case is, I'll show you in a minute. Okay. I've not done anything different. I just reset a few times and now they show. The code is the same. My behavior was the same. Now they're showing. The other thing you can do to get them to show is actually scroll through the list, because I do have some code that sets each one as you scroll through the list. Anyway, that's hyper specific. That was a bug I was looking to catch. I'm glad I actually caught it here instead of it just like not existing or whatever. But we will dive into that later. What's up, C. Grover? Nice to see you, my friend. Coffee, cheers. Got some coffee going this morning as well. So this is like an inventory list. As you can see, it's got scrolling labels for the item that is selected. It's got a selector that I can move up and down. It's got 4 items that show at once, but it can actually be a larger list of items. And then each item has its own little sprite icon there. But there is some trickery going on with the actual jewelry icons, the jewelry sprites, because I want to end up having, basically there would be a lot of permutations of the different jewelry items and the different colors of gems. And I kind of tested this out briefly with only a small subset of the permutations, and it was already using up kind of a lot of RAM. So what I have done on those is a little bit trickier. I have a base sprite that basically contains, just arbitrarily chosen, it actually contains the red one. So all the base sprites contain the red gem, but there is palette information that is stored as just numbers, as colors essentially. So it takes up very little space. There's palette information, and all the sprites are set up to where the exact same chunk of the palette represents the colors of the gem. And so the code can swap out which palette it uses, or swap out that chunk of the palette, really is what it wants to do, in order to change to the different colors. Anyway, that is also hyper specific, but that was one of the problems that I kind of geeked out on over the break in solving, in order to kind of set the stage for making this game how I want to do it, how I have in mind for like ultimately I want a bunch of different items and I need the ability to show them. Oh. Just got a mail from PyPy. The email is notifying you of an upcoming deprecation we may have determined to affect the result of your recent update. Oh, interesting. Can't use dashes. Gotta go with underscores. And then I can get back to the world. So this is kind of like Pokemon-esque, where you have a world and then you also kind of have an inventory screen, and you can bounce back and forth between them. And then ultimately the way it will work, what I have in mind is you'll run up to these like work benches or whatever, these work items, work things. This one is a furnace. You'll press a button to like interact with it, and that will bring you up to like a crafting menu where you will be able to craft, to do stuff with your items, to consume them and make different items. And I think actually where I want to dive in is on the rock. We have a rock sitting up here. Again, this is just a test room. Like, ultimately, I'll probably build out some kind of cave system or something where these rocks spawn. I haven't fully planned out every little bit of how it will all come together, and a bit of it will depend on how much RAM we have. Kind of determines how big the world can be and how, what all we can do with the world, how many different settings we can have, scenes and stuff. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, we're just in this little sort of test matrix room. And I think the first thing I really want to start on today is make a way to interact with the rock in order to get some resources. And so, like, mine resources essentially from the rock. One of the things, though, that we are going to want to do as it relates to that is, I think, stamina tracking. So I don't have much going on for stats or anything yet, so we're going to need to build out some of that. Although we can skip the stamina at first and just get it to where the rock will give us an item, which seems like a good place to start. So the way I have this set up is a lot of it is actually just refactored over into a game sort of library thing. Basically, the main code here doesn't do a lot. It basically interacts with the hardware. It initializes the display. It sets up a group. I am scaling it too. My sprites are 16 by 16, but I've scaled them up to make them look nice on the screen. The screen's fairly big. For controls, I have a Featherwing, Joy Featherwing. I have a little Featherwing connected. Yeah, it's just jumped over right now with a stemma cable, which is not probably the final way it will end up, or at least not into the doubler, but what we're rolling with for now. I created this thing and called it Activity Coordinator. I think ultimately I'm gonna probably end up just renaming it to Game. I think ultimately it ended up being more like the game, just a game object. Because somewhere we're gonna want to hold like the player object, which has the stats for stuff like stamina. And I think that this object ultimately is gonna hold all of that stuff as well. So originally I had imagined this as just a thing that is like a GUI construct that just trades out the different activities, the inventory activity, the map activity, and ultimately the crafting activity and more. But I think really what we want is a whole game. It encompasses that stuff, switching out the activities, what's visible when, but also it's going to encompass some other stuff. It's going to hold all of the stats and objects that basically the game uses. Does the email have a link explaining it? I can't find anything in the PyPy help. Okay. I'm going to refactor that for now to this and this as well. Eventually we're going to add more of that stuff to it, and I think it's good to just get that done before we use it much more. So the CircuitPy, though, again, it initializes the display, it initializes the hardware stuff, the inputs, in my case, that little Featherwing, which is on a seesaw. It creates the game instance. It sets the display to show the game instance. We actually have an extra main group that we're not really using, but that's fine. It pulls the hardware, so it pulls for new inputs on the gamepad thing. Whenever a new input comes, it calls game.handle event for whichever button it was. So handle event, button left, right, up, down, and then there will be handle event button BA, X, Y. If you want start and select, they'll potentially be there as well. X. Somehow we ended up with X instead of up. Let's change that. This is like, I don't know, maybe we should leave it. Yeah, I guess we should leave it because this is like up, down, left, right, even though they mean A, B, X, Y. I guess it just means their position in the pad there. So these get passed into the game. The game has a tick, and that's really it for CodePy. So then inside the game, the magic is once we get these events, we pass them down to the activity. Activity in my case means like a showing screen. So the world activity or the inventory activity, the crafting activity or whatever. We pass those events in there. We also have a tick, which can be used to update the world and do stuff, right? For the character to move around and all of that stuff. We can change activities, or usually what happens is an activity will call up to the game to tell it to change when it wants to. So usually the way it works right now is handle event B gets called down into the activity, and then each of the activities say when that happens, go and call the game and set the activity to world. We can refactor these to game. Not used in this one. Okay. So how about we set up the A button first of all. So I think A, for now I will plan on A being interact. So handle button A. We call that on the game. Let's make sure inside the game it's going to call it on the current activity, which is always self.mainGroup0. Main group only holds one thing currently, which is an activity, which activity extends group. Yeah, this thing is not quite aware that activity is the thing. I guess I don't think I didn't formally define activity. I mean, it extends group though, so you would think that would be okay. Anyway, I don't know. That's fine. On the A button, call the A button event, and then in our world activity is what we care about here. We can handle the A button and say game. Okay. And then basically here, we want to know what we're next to. And I think... So this code is not all that dissimilar from here. In fact, maybe we should just factor this out to be if yeah, so this basically takes a location in pixels and it builds a list that contain the sprite index of every tile that the four corners of that 16 by 16 square that is top lefted on that pixel coordinate. So we get back a list of tile indexes, essentially the tiles that are being touched by a character of the default size at that location. Maybe we say get adjacent tiles. We do need pixel location X, pixel location Y. Could, I guess, just return that. We don't necessarily need to. Why is this still mad? List got tuple. What? Oh, we have an extra. Might have deleted the wrong stuff or something. Kept some of the wrong stuff? Maybe this should have been deleted? I mean, this has everything it needs and then a comma, which should be the end, and I only want 4 points, so I think we need that, but I guess I'm gonna go back just to make sure. Not really sure how we ended up with commented code there. Okay. Fix these. Okay. Now we have a list of tiles that we're next to. This can use that. And so basically when we press the A button, we want to check if one of the tiles that we are adjacent to is the rock. The rock, we just have to do it by index, I think. Actual one. Loaded here. It's in. So the rock is 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. When we press A, we're gonna go and check if 3 is in Tiles of which location? The character's location is just player tile grid X and Y. But if they are, let's just start with printing X2 rock. Still trying to work the old way. I'm actually going to swap these back though. Since so if I just press A right now, we can see that A was pressed, but we don't get anything about the rock. If I go next to it and I press A, we still don't get anything about the rock. So I think the thing is that the collision actually stops us from touching the rock. This is not getting the adjacent tiles so much as it's getting the tiles we are on top of. So really, I think what we want to do is just use a tiny bit bigger square, essentially. We want the 4 points to be slightly further out. Which is a little tricky because I also do kind of want to use want to keep using this code here, so we kind of pretty much need like a buffer size. I don't think that's the right name, but whatever. I don't have a better one right now. So this is like a size around, so you know, we're passing in an X, a Y, but that XY is ultimately becoming 4 points, the 4 points that make up a square that is the size of our tiles. We're getting the 4 corner points of the square, essentially. This is going to make the square X amount of units bigger. However much the buffer size is will be bigger. So yeah. So for here, we would want to subtract, because this is the top left, which is down in both directions. I should label these. Top left corner. I'm gonna guess this is top right. Top right. So we have no, this is actually bottom left. Bottom left. So for bottom left, we want to go plus on the Y and minus the X. But we already have all of this, and I think we want to do all of that first. So theoretically, we don't really need the parentheses, but they kind of help my brain a little bit. Okay, so then this is bottom right. So that's going to be plus to both of them. And then that should be top right. Means we want minus on the Y and plus the X. So basically we go one, well, not one. If buffer size is 1, then we go 1 unit outside. We go buffer size units outside. So our square gets bigger by, well, technically buffer size times 2 because we get bigger by it on all sides. So we get, you pass in 1, you get bigger on the left and the top by 1, on the right and the bottom by 1. So your total square is 2 units bigger. Pixels are the units technically. Okay, so now for the purposes of moving, we can just leave it at 0. And in fact, actually, this might solve our problem that I talked about with the anvil, where the collision with the anvil stops us really far away because the visual thing is smaller than the full 16 by 16 tile sprite. Theoretically, we could use a different buffer size somehow. But that's awkward to do it for different items. Anyway, something like this, some kind of concept like this. Maybe not this one exactly, but we'll see. For now, though, we use it for this, hopefully. So 0, let's just make sure the collision still works fine. It shouldn't really have changed the collision at all, because we defaulted to 0, and adding and subtracting 0 shouldn't change anything. All right, well, we're off to a good start because we already broke it. 68 index out of bounds. So we, by subtracting, oh, I think these actually need parentheses too because divide comes first in the order of operations. So the / divide there is happening to the buffer size, but really we want the minus first. So yeah, those parentheses actually were less optional than I thought. Pretty sure we need them. Oh, I have auto run turned off. Or auto reload, I mean. Okay, there we go. Okay, collision still works. We can go around that. We can go around this, around everything. We will try to avoid going out the door. I mean, one thing we could do is, like, realistically, we could make all of these a slightly different buffer. Like, because now we could actually use a negative buffer as well, I think. So, like, if I did, like, -2, I think that means we get to be 2 pixels closer to the obstacles before it, like, stops us from moving. Am I closer to the rock? My head's touching it. Yeah, I think we're closer now. So this one is still by far the worst one because it's the smallest visually. But we do get closer than we did before, and these ones all we're touching. So we could probably actually just roll with a default that's even a tad smaller. Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of nice. Oh, we don't want that much overlap there in the back where the feet are getting. Why is that? So that's... might actually be a bug. I actually did find a bug. No, we're just on top, I think. I think we're on top. Which is awkward because really we want to be on top in the front. Like that looks correct, right? Our head is in front of the shelf. And that's good. But then back here, technically the shelf should be in front of our feet. The shelf should be covering up our feet there. But it can't really because it's only one sprite. Now, like, this one has that effect on its chimney stack, which can get layered on top. But we do still now have the ability to, like, walk on the top of the thing. That's not so good. Okay. So this, I guess, is a slight improvement, but not, we can't push it too far, otherwise we start drawing on top of stuff. So yeah, we probably don't want to go any farther than that, fortunately. Which is a little bit better, because I did feel like we were just a tad far away. I mean, we still kind of are on the rock, truthfully. Certainly on the anvil. But maybe we come up with a different solution later. Anyway, the other thing that this should allow us to do now is when we press the A button, we should be able to say buffer size, like we could say 1 or 2 positive. Start with 1 positive and see if that works. And one thing I just realized is if you're like exactly aligned in the center of the thing, it's because the buffer size is gonna make the box bigger, you might actually not count as being adjacent to it. Maybe we need to also check 1 extra pixel, the one directly in front of us. Okay, that's still not working. And just for posterity's sake, what are the adjacent tiles? Unresolved reference to self. I mean, I guess game would... No, game is not self. We're in the activity. Why would self be unresolved? Oh. Right. That doesn't really mean self isn't, but I could see how it might confuse the, I suppose. Yeah. We actually say we're next to. Oops, wrong button. So now we're next to nothing. So, and we're checking specifically the like same layer as the player, which is the collision layer. We run up to that. Oh, I'm being silly because I set it to 3 and 3 is the rock, and I totally ran up to the forge, not the rock. So, yeah. There we go. Okay, that is working. So it knows that we're next to the rock now. Cool. I will walk away. We're not. Yep, we are. Okay. If we're next to the rock, for now, let's just give them a thing. We are going to give them a copper ore. But in order to be able to give them a copper ore, we need the concept of them and them having things to exist, which don't currently. We have an inventory, but currently the inventory just has a hard-coded list of items that are just getting added to it. So what we want to do is take this away from being a random hard-coded list of items, and instead we need a player. We either need a player object. I'm inclined to say we want a player object that has an inventory. And then that's what we're going to add to, and that's also what we're going to show when we're on that page. And the player object can have some other stuff as well. In fact, maybe the player object should have the player tile grid. Or be the player tile grid. Maybe should it extend tile grid? Is there a reason why we shouldn't extend tile grid? I have a reason why we shouldn't tile grid off the top of my head. So let's make new class player extends tile grid colon. Oh, well, we need a colon down here. I guess that's where my brain was at. Excuse me. So we're going to want to pass some stuff. So yeah. Part that's less cool about this is then now we need to like either accept all of these arguments individually. Well, that's not true. We don't need to, we actually don't need to accept any of those. All of those can be hard coded. In fact. We can move player sprite sheet and player palette to player. So sprite sheet and palette, because we're inside player now. I don't think we need player anymore. Import that. Okay, so now we have self sprite sheet and self palette. I'm gonna delete them from here. Transparent 0. This is creating the tile grid, so that is super. These copy, I guess. File size we don't have. That's basically just hard-coded to 16. I think I'll just steal that and hard-code it to 16 here as well. That one maybe should be shouty. Possibly even a const, because it's not going to change. Okay, these are now self.spritesheet and palette. Tile, okay, that's all good. You can put height and width on a row together. Seems nice. Maybe default tile could go down as well, actually. Okay. Now. Comment this instead of delete it. That's just randomly putting the player at a location. Eventually we'll do something more sophisticated than this probably, but like probably the map, like especially if we end up having like different maps, which could be thought as like different rooms. Like if you walk through a door and it loads a new JSON file, then that's a new map. If we end up having different maps, then the maps will probably have some information that says where the player should spawn. But the player's only going to get created once, so the map would just be changing into X and Y, not setting it. Anyway, yeah, we're just kind of randomly hard-coding it to 4.4 currently. That gets appended. So then ultimately what we're going to want to do is create self.player equals player layer. I mean, that's the one I want, but I don't really want it like that. I wish that did not do that. Okay, where we at here? Player, okay. So it doesn't take any arguments. Currently, that's fine. We should then be able to append player because player extends tile grid. So this should behave the same way, hopefully. And it does not. Has, oh, right. We need to change all the player tile grids to player. There we go. Oh, I got stuck on the, okay. Yeah, there is only one sort of like pixel of clearance there. Although it's actually like not too bad because it lets you kind of like slide off the edge or whatever if you go at an angle. Pretty easy to hit, even though it's not actually a huge amount of clearance. Okay. We have a player. Player is going to have an inventory. Which is going to be a list of items that starts empty. Somewhere down the road, we're going to have to worry about writing this stuff out. The SD card is my intention. There's an SD card on the Featherwing that has the display. And I think like long-term storage will go on the SD card, so we'll save the game state whenever the player says to, maybe. Like maybe we just have a save button, or maybe we do it. I was thinking about like when we have stamina, then I think we'll want a bed to be able to recharge stamina. Maybe we go Stardew Valley style where it saves when you go to bed. That might not be a bad idea. But that's also down the road a bit. For now, we have an inventory. We should be able to add an object to it whenever we are pressing the A button next to the rock. Self.player.inventory.append. And the objects are just like dictionaries because they are ultimately JSONable. And I am going to go and copy copper ingot so that I don't have to all of this stuff memorized. We do need a different sprite. Ooh. Wait. That's the wrong sprite sheet. There's an item sprite sheet. Items. So yeah, you can, I never even went back and cut all these back out yet. But yeah, you can see I started to work on this permutations. But I don't know if I ever actually explained all the way why the permutations explode so much, but I want at least 4 different kinds of metal. And then I currently just have 4 different gems, although I ultimately want more than 4 gems. So there would be more of those, which means there'd be more permutations of this. So for each metal, we want to be able to show each color of gem. And so we end up multiplying the number of metals by the number of colors of gems. And then we also have different things. So these are just bracelets. And there will be ultimately rings and necklaces and earrings as well, which is another multiplication to the number of things. So we end up with a lot of sprites in order to be able to show all the permutations of all the items in each metal with each color of gem, which is why the whole palette trick I talked about before ended up being a thing that I honed in on and figured out. For the copper ore, we want this, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's an 8 by 8 right now, at least. I'll cut it down because this whole patch can go away because that's now done differently. Maybe now is the time. Should I just cut it down now? We're going to want more gems eventually, though, so maybe we leave it. I'm just going to leave it alone for now, but ultimately I also think what I'll do is I'll leave it 8 wide. Maybe we'll cut these out and then get rid of a row or 2 or 3 at the bottom. But I'll keep it 8 wide because I do still want to add more gems. Anyway, copper ore should be 8. So when we do this, here's how our items work. Well, here's one of the ways our items can work. We have a sprite index here that tells it, you know, which index to use. We have a palette that we can set for it, and we have a sprite sheet that can be set for it. This one's a sheet. The item, the jewelry ones can be single sprites instead of sheets as well. There's like issue I was running older versions of Estes and Wheel. Okay, so that's gonna add to the inventory, so that's good. Okay, one problem actually I just thought of is I put player on world, but it shouldn't be. Player should be on game. But so that's tricky. We want player actually to be on game, not on world, because inventory, which is a different activity. World activity is this activity. Inventory activity is a different activity. And it also needs access to the player because it needs access to the inventory. So player really should not be on world activity. Player should be on game. But then the next problem becomes that player, the tile grid, is in the group above some of the tile grids that make up the map, the world, but below some others or one other. Which is quite tricky if the player gets created elsewhere. So what we need to do actually, I think, is accept the player here. Player self.player equals player. And then we're not going to be creating it here. We're going to be passing it in. It can still get added to the group at the same spot. But now we will go back up to the game level. And then before we create the world activity, that is when we're going to create the player. Oh, hey, that time it didn't get the CircuitPy thing. Nice. And then we can pass that in to the world activity. And now when we let me think about this actually, because what we want to do is like we basically want to like refresh the inventory. We want to set the inventory list whenever we show the inventory activity. Maybe player should also get passed to the inventory activity. I'm actually thinking player should also get passed to the inventory activity. That way we will be able to get the inventory easily inside of here. Yeah. And resolve reference player. Oh, self.player. Okay. And then we also need to figure out where or how do we tell it to like refresh. So how does the list work? So the list is on items. We should make a way to change items first of all. Maybe that's it. Maybe we have items as a property and by setting it, it's gonna but I don't know. So this is all hard-coded to like create rows with items. We don't have enough items, it's gonna crash. Yeah. We're gonna need it to be able to accept none. So let's see. We know those aren't going to be there anymore, so we'll just say none. Then inside of there, item, item. Then we need to, I guess, so, but set item will change those, so we can basically just go if item is not none, this, else. I don't think we technically probably need to do this part, but I'm gonna do it just for, seems correct. We set those to none. Count, we'll just count, we'll put in here 2, and then we'll just put it to 1 if it's not an item. We do 0. It doesn't really matter what we set it to, honestly. It's gonna get overwritten. Technically, we probably want it to be blank instead of 1 somehow. But it's probably wanting to be a number. I'm not sure. Leave it alone for now. Count label, icon, none, none, init views. Init views is going to also do some stuff with item. I mean, most of this logic is actually also in here. Maybe what we should do is just initialize the things to blank and then call set item. Because all of this stuff should be also happening down here, like count label text equals count. Count label getting created, text equals count. But when we init, we're not going to have items yet, so we don't have a count. I mean, we hard-coded a count of 1, but we're going to have a, we don't have a title, which is the next problem we'll run into, or an icon. But I think what we do here is empty string. Empty string. We don't need to do anything with palette. We don't need to do anything with icon. Do we? Maybe we do. I think actually we do. Yeah, see, this is not referencing item. Basically, what we want to get rid of is everything referencing item. So alt palette, this is how the palette tricks with different colors work, but this is referencing item here. We don't have an item yet, which means this should be happening also down here somewhere. There should be analogous code that's doing the same thing. You get rid of that there. We do want to create the main sheet icon, but we're not using it yet. We're not setting it to anything to do with item yet. It will only get used later when we set an actual item. So if sprite is, so if item sprite, not main sheet, so this is again referencing item, I think we just don't mess with this at all. Or main sheet. If it's not main sheet, then it just assumes that icon already exists. So we need to create icon for sure. So I guess what we could do is just create it either one. Doesn't matter which one we do, and it's getting updated here by updating the bitmap and the pixel shader. So rid of the if statement. Get rid of the hidden because we don't have an item, so we don't know if it's main sheet or not. Doesn't really matter if we hide it right now, I don't think. You just default it to that. Or it might make sense to default it to the ring one since it's smaller. Bracelet one doesn't matter right now though. Let's just do it this. So that creates the icon. If item sprite index is in the item keys, we don't have an item, so let's get rid of that. Same thing is happening down here. So now we have created all the things we want. This was me trying to fix that bug where it doesn't draw the text the first time or whatever. Icon X, that's fine. Main sheet icon, that's fine. And all those things. Okay, so yeah, init views now just initializes views. It doesn't try to set their stuff to anything. So now what we can do is whenever we're ready, we can just call set item. Get the thing we want. We should create 4 empty rows. This should now create 4 empty rows. And then what we'll do is we'll say property items list, update that, and then let's just call that selection. Maybe we don't. We need to do something, I'm sure, right? We need to basically like go and call set item on each of the first 4 items, basically. Yeah. So for I in range, so we want to go the range of the minimum of length of items and 4. So we want whichever's smaller, however many items we have, or 4, which is how many we show at a time. We want to loop that many and basically call self.rows I.set item items I. This is actually setter though. We should make a getter. I don't even think this is how this can work really. So now I think what we do is in the game, when we switch to inventory, let's go and items equals player inventory. Okay. So when we press A next to the rock, it should add an ore to our inventory. When we show the inventory, it should refresh for the items that we have. Be able to see that work if it does in fact work. Property is not defined. Property is not defined. Property is not proper. Ported bitmap type. Probably none. Spreadsheet got set to none. Okay, new plan. We can't do the sprite sheet one. We need to do the main sheet. Or what was the other one? Shoot. Okay, let's do this one. This one is hard-coded to the sprite sheet for a single item. Doesn't really matter which item, because it's going to get changed whenever it gets used. It's going to get changed before it gets seen anyway. And this way we don't rely on sprite sheet. Doesn't exist. Self that sprite sheet. Okay. Go to the rock, press A, hash in dictionary. 20 in world activity. And so I think, and oh, I have a double curly brackets. Okay. The one thing I see right away is that this happens a lot of times in a row, really fast. Okay. And also it did not actually work all the way. Let's rerun this and see what it looks like before I interact with the rock. Looks the exact same. Okay. So We are going in setting. Well, okay, so but in this case, we don't have any items to set. It is curious that we see. Oh, we see both actually. Right. I guess we could set one to hidden. We should set the ring to hidden. It's a bracelet actually in this case, but we should set that to hidden, and then I guess the other one, which is the main sheet, on that one we can leave it visible, but what we can do is just set it to a tile that's not used by anything, a transparent tile. So then we'll end up with actual empty looking list, which is what we want. We'll take care of the fact later that you can scroll through the empty list, which we don't ultimately want, but for now, not worried too much about that. So let's go back to inventory row and let's hide the, so inside of a init, let's hide icon, hidden, true, and then main sheet here, let's do default tile is 7 because that's the end of the first row, which is empty. So now we should actually just have an empty list. And we do. Okay. We can still scroll it, which again, eventually we'll want to deal with, but for now that's fine. So, but the real problem now is that it stays empty even if we go and get some stuff from the rock, which we don't want. Now it should have stuff. So are we calling into items setter, and are we calling into set item? Print inside items setter. Print inside set item. Also, I gotta run to the restroom, so I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, where are we at? Yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah, that happens sometimes. Seen that happen sometimes. I think that it's something to do with the I2C reading the gamepad, the Featherwing, Joy Featherwing. I think I need try-catch around the code that tries to read that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's your problem right there. So we never we never got to items setter. And we never got to set item. But so you press B in the world activity, it calls game.setActivityInventory. When you call setActivity, if it was equal to inventory, then we go inventory items equals player items. Huh? Okay, so is it not called items? Oh, inventory activity. Right. Inventory activity dot inventory list dot items. That's actually what we need. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, some things about this. Ultimately, the count is supposed to let you stack items. So we should not have 4 1 copper ores, or possibly even more than 4. It's tough to say because of the way the scrolling looks. We should have one, we should have 4 of them, or however many we have. It should show that in the count. So when we add it like this, I think that what we want to do is actually say player I think we want to have like a player dot add to inventory essentially, and it will have a little bit of extra logic that will handle the counts. We should technically probably also have a count here, because I think the inventory row expects that to be there. It's just hard coding to 1, and that's making it work for now, but we want to probably put that, because eventually maybe you'll be able to find more than 1 as well. Okay. Let's go to player, and let's make def add to inventory. I'll call this item object because technically it could represent, like count 4, right? It could represent 4 items. But the item would have been fine. And we want to do this, but we want some extra logic first. So we could just take that. Okay. So before we add it, we want to go and check if we already have it or not. So def index of item. Item object. For I and item in enumerate self.inventory is a list. We're looping over that. We're gonna say, I'm gonna call this cur item if cur item dot name. Actually, I'm gonna access it this way. If name equals to item object name, then we're gonna return I, which is the index of the item, index that we found the item at. And if we don't ever find it, then we're gonna return -1. And then inside of here, we're gonna say existing index equals self.index of item, the new item, and then we say if existing index is -1, then we just add it. Else we say self.inventory existing index count plus equals item object count. So now, instead of having one copper ore, one copper ore, one copper ore, we should end up with just a number, multiple copper ore. We do also still have the problem that we need debouncing on the A button, because we don't really want to be just giving out that much copper ore instantaneously fast like that, but oh, that did not work. Oh, wait. We didn't call add it, so we need to use that new function. So here, instead of just appending directly, we're gonna go self.player.add to inventory. I don't know why it doesn't want to beat that, but okay. There we go. Okay. Now we got a stack. At some point, we'll worry about the maximum stack size and all of that, but for now, that's pretty good. Let's try to do some debouncing so that you only get one per. And then after that, we can maybe look at stamina. So where would that debouncing take place? So we should, there's already debouncing on the debouncing somewhere on the B button, I thought. Yeah. I think we just do the same thing for the A button. So basically what we want is no debouncing on the D-pad, which in my case is actually a joystick, but you could play the same game with the D-pad. We want no debouncing on the arrow keys, but yes debouncing on the A, B, X, Y. So for A button here, we're gonna go and we're just gonna basically do the same old buttons, bit mask, 1 button right. So now we should only get one. event when we press A, hopefully. It's the plan at least. All right, there we go. So I pressed it twice there, we got 2. Get 1 per. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, next I think stamina. We want to be able to show it, and I think not using the whole screen. I don't know if eventually I'll want, I mean, we are in just a test room here. I don't know if eventually I'll want to use up the rest of the empty space here. But I think let's plan on using at least the bottom little row for like HUD type stuff. And right now I think that is going to mean stamina bar, which I would like to make a yellow progress bar essentially, because I feel like that's pretty stock standard. CircuitPython progress bar, GitHub. Fine. This is gonna be I think, does group have insert? Does. Okay. I think actually what we want to do is, I think we want the HUD, I think we want this to be visible no matter what activity you're in. So my first thought was we put this in the world activity because the world is where the player is, which is where you're running around and using up your stamina. So definitely you want to be able to see it when you're in the world. But ultimately, I think the crafting is going to take stamina as well. Like when you want to go and refine your ore, that is also going to take, it's going to cost stamina. And that is going to be done from a crafting screen, probably. And so we probably just want your stamina to always be visible, which makes me think we probably just want like a HUD group that we always show on top of the other thing. In my case, I'm calling them activities. So what we're going to do is when we change activities here, the logic currently says if the length is greater than 1, then pop the old one. Pop the last one. In our case is the old one, because basically we were keeping it to where we always had exactly 1. We would get rid of the old one, we would add a new one. When the time came, we get rid of the old one, we add the new one. What we're going to do now is the exact same thing, except we're going to keep it with 2. We're going to have the activity and the HUD group. Whenever we want to change activities, we're going to get rid of the old activity and put the new activity in. But it does need to go underneath the HUD group inside of the main group. So that needs to be insert at 0. Like that. And then we'll make a HUD group up here. And we'll add it to main group after world activity. HUD group. Maybe we should make this into its own class? I'm tempted to do that just out of the gate here. Is there any reason why we should wait on that, or should we just go ahead and do that now? I think we should probably just do that now. HUD group, HUD display, I guess. HUD overlay, HUD display. Let's just call it HUD display. Class HUD display. Yes. Extends group. Okay. So inside of the HUD, we are going to have a progress bar for stamina. That's stamina bar. The horizontal progress bar. X and Y, I'm just going to put those on 0, 0. And then when we want to position this HUD display, we're going to position it based on the XY of the superclass group, not the progress bar inside of it. Eventually, when we add more stuff to the HUD, we will change the location of the stuff within the HUD to make it look good together. But for now, we only have one thing. We're just going to do that there. Height, let's start with 8. Actually, I'm going to start with 4 and see what that looks like. It doesn't need to be too big, but I also don't necessarily have plans for other bars. Like, I don't necessarily want a health bar, because I don't necessarily want a combat system. This game is basically just mine to get items to craft into jewelry. The jewelry will give you better stats to be able to mine and craft better. Be able to make better jewelry to be able to mine and craft better. Kind of the game loop doesn't really involve fighting monsters or anything. At least in my current vision. So, there's no life bar, which means also no like mana or anything like that. So I think stamina is probably the only bar we're gonna have. For now, at least. But it doesn't need to be too thick either. So we'll start with 4 pixels tall. Yeah, all of that was a long-winded train of thought about how tall it should be. Ended on 4 pixels. The width, I think, I mean, it's kind of arbitrary. I don't know, maybe 100 or something. That might be too big. That might be too small. I don't really know. We'll see what it looks like. Direction, left to right, that's fine. I think we can do color or something, maybe. How do we do the color? Must be a color default or something. Docs. So I want yellow, because I feel like yellow is the typical choice for stamina at video games. So there's bar color, border color. I'm guessing fill, which is a color. Fill of the bar. So that fill we want yellow, and then bar color I guess we'll do some kind of like grayish. So bar color, grayish, like something like that. And then fill we want yellow. And I'll do no outline. Actually, let's do an outline of the same color as the fill. Border, it's called border color though. Border color. Let's do that. Okay, stamina bar. Whoops. Okay. Self.append. Stamina bar. So, yeah, that's the only thing we have right now, but we're nice and ready to go. A display. A display does not actually take anything, so I don't know why that's doing that. Yeah, I don't know why I did this. I like appended the, maybe this is part of why the bug with the labels, or maybe this was part of my attempt at solving the bug with the labels. I'm not sure. In any case, we were setting the group to the inventory activity and then immediately popping it back out and setting it to the world activity, which is unnecessary. We can just set it to the world activity, leave it there until the user changes it. That's fine. Realistically, we shouldn't be popping and appending directly to main group anyway at this point. We should probably be calling set activity from this point on so that we make sure to always pull from the bottom of the group, because we're about to add the HUD display. All right, so we check if we're at 2. If we are, we remove the first one. We insert the new activity at 0. And then same thing, if it's inventory, we insert the new activity at 0. And then our HUD is at index 1, and it stays on top of our activity technically. Okay. So we should be able to see it now? Question mark. Although we want to move it still. So inside of game, actually, let's say HUD display .HUD display .y equals I'm just gonna guess well, we have 16 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 16 times 9. 144. Let's actually round it out to 10 and call it 160. Yeah. And let's also go in just a smidge so that we're not like literally on the edge. Tend to prefer a bit of margin. I think looks nice, in spite of some brands deciding otherwise lately. No module name progress bar, so we can install that. Circup install. I have no idea what it defaults to. If it defaults to 0 or 100, basically. Unexpected keyword argument fill. Fill color. Did I not see a thing that said fill? Ew. Okay. I don't think it's great that the property is called fill, but the argument is called fill color. That's not why we're gathered here today. Keyword argument border color. Border color? Progress bar? Border color? Huh? Border color? Okay. Let's look at the code then. So this one is refactored into progress bar. Base definitely has a border color. Progress bar by itself is horizontal progress bar. This is backwards compatible. Technically not using that. We're using this. Extend base. Yeah. Yeah, technically we should be passing in border color here also. This should have all the same things that base has, because it's going to turn around and pass them to base. Well, maybe not all the same. I don't know. Maybe there's a few that it doesn't. True, though. Like fill direction might change base. Okay, so how do we... We can't actually set the border color correctly. Let me just get the Python one and we can change the code while we're here. Already installed. I mean, we could maybe change the property after we create it. I feel like it's an oversight that it doesn't exist, though. It's progress bar. So it defaults to white inside of this one. Guess we just keep the same. And it comes right before fill color. So I think we probably just put it in the same spot. Right before fill color. Yeah, border color, we can keep the same default. And then right before fill color. But these are not named. Base. Bar color. Color. I don't know how this is working anyway. Because this had bar color right before fill color until I just added... Well, no, this is the base one. So it had border color. But this one... Oh, okay, I see what's happened. Okay, that's also a little bit annoying, kind of. So in the trial class, horizontal progress bar, it's called outline color. But in the parent class, progress bar base, it's called border color. Presumably it's the same concept in both. Not ideal to have different names, I don't think. But for us, I think that just means we need outline color here, I suppose. That's the wrong color anyway. Line color should be there. Okay, the size of the borders and margins combined must be less than the height. Border thickness. The size of the borders and margins combined must be less than the height of the widget. Margin size of 1 and border size of 1. So we can't actually, we need to go bigger than 4. Let's try 6. It should be down there somewhere, but I don't see it. That's not great. It might be just not filled in? I don't know. Does it have max value? Default is 100. Well, let's set value to 100. That should fill it all the way in. So it should be yellow for us if it's working. Does not appear to be. Let's see if changing activity still works. Yeah, we have an empty inventory. Let's see if off the joystick thing again. See if this still works. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I mean, my best guess is that it's too far, I suppose. 160. I mean, my screen is 320 by 240. I'm scaled, but this should be... Okay. Yeah, I know my problem. This needs to be half, basically. Okay. So, yeah. It's not in the best spot, but it's visible. I guess what we would want... I don't know why it's there. Doesn't quite make sense to me either. And then the other thing that's weird is it doesn't seem like the fill there's a line in the middle. It seems like the fill color is wrong. Maybe I got them backwards? Maybe I got them backwards. But the location definitely wrong too. But why did 160 turn out like that? Because my tiles are 16 and I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, I guess 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 tiles that are 16 by 16. So I did 9 earlier. I guess I actually meant 8. And that should be... should be putting the bar... right? Should it... maybe it doesn't need to be divide, but it does need 120 instead of 160? Okay. And then what I do really want to do, I think, is still move it down like another 16. Because technically we have... it feels like we have 2 empty tiles at the bottom. Yeah, and eventually we could move it elsewhere too, but for now I just want it down there somewhere that's not on top of the world currently, at least. The colors. Let's try to fix the colors. So I guess my problem is these are backwards. Okay, there we go. Now we have a gray outline with a yellow fill. Kind of tough to see on the left edge at this angle, but it's there. And that represents our stamina. And I think what we'll do is... should the player probably... let's do that. Now it's weird though, because the stamina is a stat on the player, but the HUD is like its own whole thing, separate from the player. But the game has the player and the HUD, so I suppose the game is where the action happens. And so what we're gonna do then is when we press the A button and we're next to the rock, we are adding that thing to the inventory. We're also gonna go player dot current stamina minus equals. I'm just gonna do 10 as a hard-coded value for now. Eventually we're gonna play with all these numbers. We should also ultimately check if they have enough stamina left. Again, I'll just hard code that for now. And then because the variable there is actually separate, we need to update the UI also. And in that case, it's on game HUD display stamina bar value. Set it to the current stamina. Okay, so now, nice. You can find multiple times and it takes the stamina down. Our inventory, we've gotten all of those. There's like a lockout period after you change. 9. Sure what's up with the lockout thing. Now we're down to no stamina, but we do have 10 copper ore. But theoretically, it shouldn't let us do it again. So I pressed it a few more times now. I'm going to go back, and yeah, we still only have 10. Cool, so now we have stamina, and it's stopping us from mining whenever we don't have any left. So I think I'm going to probably stop there for now. And I suppose the next stuff to do is... I don't currently have a way to get your stamina back, so I think we need to add a bed as one of the usable items, or like interactable items. When you go to the bed, it will give you your stamina back and potentially save the game for you onto the SD card. But I made good progress. feel like this is more or less what I wanted to get done today, was get the rock to give you items and actually be able to get those items into your inventory and see them on the inventory screen and have them stack correctly. And then we also went and did stamina, which I did not necessarily have in my more concrete plans. So it's nice to have that done as well, because that is going to come into the mix for the other crafting things as well. So I think the next steps are the bed, like I said a minute ago, to be able to get your stamina back, and then also to start doing the other crafts. So turn your ore into ingots in the smelting thing. We also need to work on the loot tables. So right now the rock just always gives you the same thing, but eventually what it gives you is going to be based on like your mining skill and some other stuff. So we need loot tables that define like what are the possible things it could give you, and then it's going to roll a random dice basically to decide which one you actually get. So that kind of stuff needs to be set up still. One of the things in the loot table will also be geodes, which you can break open with the anvil thing, and once you've got your ore processed to your ingot and your geode broken open to a gem, then you'll be able to cut the gem and finally combine it with a ingot to make a jewelry thing, which will have a stat modifier. So it might have like plus to your stamina, or it might have plus to your mining, or it might have plus to your smelting, or whatever. So the jewelry will give you plus stats, essentially. And then ultimately we'll need a way to equip jewelry. So on the inventory page here, we can scroll through the inventory. Probably what we'll want is like, I think on the right half of the screen will be your equipment, the stuff you actually have currently equipped. So once you have created a thing that gives you plus stats, you'll be able to kind of like equip it to actually go ahead and get your stats. So that is the rough sort of current and short-term future plans for this. But I do think I'll wrap it up for now there. Hope you have a good rest of your day. If you happen to be in the central US, then be careful with the storm potentially rolling through. It's supposed to be, I guess, pretty bad winter storm, lots of snow and stuff. So I'll probably be hunkered down in the cold for the next couple of days. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day, good weekend, all that stuff. I should be back, I think, next week at the normal time, as far as I know. Although I do have a thing that is coming up at some point that needs to get rescheduled. I was supposed to do something later today, and we postponed it for the because the storm's rolling in. So possibly I'll have to bump the stream either next week or the week after or whatever. But I don't know my schedule on that yet, so I can't really say for sure. In any case, I sure do appreciate you watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you later. Thanks.